This is Felt Recoil.
Welcome to the Felt Recoil Podcast. This is episode number 46. My name is Chris. Straight across from me in a Smith & Wesson armor shirt because he's way cooler than you. His name is
Patrick.
How are you, sir?
Armorific.
Armorific. I like it. Okay. A lot to get to this week. Obviously, we'll talk the Vegas shooting. I forgot to say two things about Glocks. I'm going to tell you about my hands going on vacation, and we're going to talk about the Glock 46 and a little bit more to get to. Two things before we really dive in deep. Number one, we'll tell you about our charity of choice. This week's charity of choice is the Special Operations Warrior Foundation. Special Operations Warrior Foundation ensures full financial assistance for a post-secondary degree from an accredited 2 or 4-year college, university, technical, or trade school, and it offers family and educational counseling, including in-home tutoring, to the surviving children of Army, Navy, Air Force, and Marine Corps Special Operations personnel who lose their lives in the line of duty. In case you haven't heard, as of right now, we're recording this on Wednesday, October the 4th, 2017, just today, this evening, our time, about an hour ago, breaking news from the New York Times, 3 United States Army Special Forces were killed and 2 more wounded in an ambush in Niger while on a routine patrol with troops that were training from that nation in northwestern Africa. Obviously, that matters for our charity, but isn't it interesting to think about where our guys are and how they're helping all across the world in places maybe you've never heard of or you haven't thought about in a very, very long time. And then on a day like today, as we're still kind of reeling from the tragedy of Las Vegas, we lose 3 of our finest in an ambush in a country I couldn't even point out on a map, probably. So that is where our charity of choice this week steps in. The Special Operations Warrior Foundation will ensure that their kids and their family are taken care of. Again, a post-secondary degree, full financial assistance from an accredited 2 or 4-year college for the kids who these brave heroes leave behind. The Special Operations Warrior Foundation also provides immediate financial assistance to severely wounded and hospitalized special operations personnel. So it's fitting this week that that's our charity of choice. We wish it wasn't. FeltRecoilShow.com/charities or specialops.org. But again, as always, details on this wonderful organization can be found at feltrecoilshow.com, specialops.org for the Special Operations Warrior Foundation. Okay? All right. So Vegas, the Glock 46, and a lot of things we haven't quite wrapped our head around. We'll get into all of it. Obviously, gun control is the topic du jour. Dianne Feinstein's going after slide fire stocks. I work in a gun store. I will tell you, in the 4.5, almost 5 years I've been there, I have never, ever sold a slide fire stock to anyone. We carried them for a very short amount of time, but nobody ever asks for them. And the minute this lunatic commits his atrocity in Vegas and the lunatic Democratic Senator Dianne Feinstein gets up and starts talking, everybody wants one. And so I'm going to talk to the gun community. If you're a gun guy in any way whatsoever, we're going to have a conversation. I'm going to try and be as clear as possible as I can about how you're not helping the situation. I don't want to seem mean. Patrick, you tell me if I get out of line.
I always do.
But we'll get there. All right, this week's episode is brought to you by vaping. Vaping, in case people think you're normal. Tell them, no way, man, I vape. Okay. Vaping. Thanks for coming on board as a sponsor of vaping in general. All right. So if you don't know, then you're probably not listening to this podcast because you live under a rock and watch MTV all day and think reality television is the best thing on the face of the earth. So you have no interest in this program. But if you, for some reason, are lost, and here you are. A shooter in Las Vegas killed 58 people and then ate his own gun, so he doesn't count. It's just one thing, by the way, this is where I'll start with what annoys me about these situations, is how these guys always get to do themselves in, and I find that to be the worst part. as a B here. A, the worst part being that he did what he did anyway, but B is we need stories of heroes. I wish there was that story of the officer getting in there and popping this dude in the face and finding his permanent off switch, and then we could celebrate the officer instead of focusing so much on the killer. But unfortunately not. He killed himself. And so he took 58 people out before he did himself in. Wounded, I've seen estimates up to 500 people gathered out of 20,000, by the way.
I think 527 was the last I heard.
Man. It's unimaginable. So he killed 58 people in Las Vegas on Sunday night, according to the reviewjournal.com. This is the Las Vegas Review Journal. And they're kind of highlighting the fact that this goes back to mental health. Apparently, this man was prescribed some anti-anxiety drugs that can lead to aggressive behavior. I've never really heard of that. I don't know. As someone who has taken anti-anxiety medicine in the past, I can tell you it's not a side effect I've ever experienced. I've never been warned, watch out, you might get aggressive. So I don't know what the line is they're drawing, but mental health is a real issue. We had a conversation here recently. We live in Greenville, South Carolina, and in Greenville, South Carolina, kind of another cause that everyone's getting worked up about is we have this quote-unquote tent city now in the city of Greenville, South Carolina. And everybody acts very I don't want to say disingenuous, but they kind of are. Everybody, you have guys that go out and they film themselves giving these people $1 McDoubles for a day. And that's nice of them to do, but what good does it do those people? Okay, yeah, you put some warm food in their belly, you wish them all the best, you go about your business. They still live in a tent under a bridge in downtown Greenville. The problem I have with it is it ignores why that city exists, largely due to mental illness and drug dependency, right?
Sure.
So where does drug dependency come from? Where does alcoholism come from? I don't believe it's a disease, but that aside, where does it come from? How does it manifest itself in an individual? It is largely, as I've experienced in my own life, self-medication. If you have anxiety and you don't talk to a doctor, you might think, a couple of snips on a drink here and there will cure it. It might make it worse in a crowded situation, so you drink more and you abuse alcohol. Things like that will happen. A lot of these people are self-medicating. So it's a mental illness that they're not getting proper treatment for. They're not learning how to identify and respond properly to real triggers, okay? It's not just a thing that a liberal experiences when a conservative opens his mouth. Triggers are things where you can have someone you interact with and they rub you the wrong way and you can't figure out why, and suddenly you have anxiety. And if you haven't heard from a professional, that what you can do is go, okay, wait a second, what is it about this person that bothers me? And then you identify the trigger, you can then remedy the problem. You then go, well, my anxiety is based on the fact that this guy annoys the crap out of me because he gets in my business every time I turn around. I just don't like dealing with him. If you don't know to do that, your anxiety can feel like it's crushing you from every angle and you don't know why. Everything feels wrong, and so you just panic because, man, something bad's about to happen and I don't know why, I don't know what it is, what's going on around me. Okay, now I'm speaking from personal experience. I'm not trying to tell you that's what your anxiety is about, but anxiety in general, panic attacks and anxiety attacks can be a result of those things, and so you begin self-medicating to unwind or whatever the case may be, and that leads to drug and alcohol abuse, right? So here's another instance of a man who obviously had mental issues, and a guy I work with today put it the best way. Someone on TV needs to repeat what my friend David said today, where he said, obviously, we'll never rationalize the actions of a madman. And I thought, there you go. That's it. That's really the answer that everyone's looking for, is there is no rationale here. He's just a crazy dude. Just a crazy dude that did a crazy thing. So we're not going to try and do that tonight, but we are going to point out, not a gun issue. It's not. It's a mental health issue from what it appears to be. And it's also an issue of, Bill O'Reilly said today, and it's got some people worked up, that this is the cost of freedom. And I think there's a bit of truth in that. The problem with freedom is that everyone is free until they lose the right to be free. Okay? So if this guy had never committed a crime before, if he had a clean record, then we had no right up to that point to deny him the right to keep and bear arms. And then people want to talk about gun registration, and we need to know who has guns, and we need to profile the people that have guns. But there's no registration for Muslims in the country, and everyone would scoff at that. There's no test to vote. There's no such thing as a poll tax. There's no other God-given right on you that is so quickly chilled by the actions of politicians. There's nothing else. It's only the Second Amendment. And so the push will become that they will want to change the Constitution. That's going to be the ultimate goal. They're going to show you. Jimmy Kimmel will go so far as to blame you and me, which he did on national television.
Well, that's sort of his shtick.
Guys like Chris and Patrick are the problem because they like guns and they're monsters, and so they're somewhat responsible. They know deep down they're somewhat responsible for what happened in Vegas. And that's as fallacious, a statement as saying I'm responsible for his child's heart problems. Okay? I know his kid has medical issues that he uses as a platform to push for single-payer health care, and that's okay. That's his cause. He can take it up. But it's not on him to blame me when a guy buys a bunch of guns, who, by the way, Jimmy, this disproves your argument. Everyone around says he wasn't even a gun guy. Articles on the Daily Beast say the only reason this guy was able to do what he did is because the guns were so good. The guy didn't like guns. The guy never liked guns. He liked evil, and he wanted to be evil, and he wanted to execute evil by executing people, and that's what he did. Not a gun issue. It's an issue of the man himself. He's a result, as is Jimmy Kimmel's logic, of a society like we talked about before that knows no consequence for its actions. People are accustomed to the idea that they can do what they want, blame anything else, and walk away from it except themselves. You cannot blame the snowflakes. You cannot blame the 64-year-old man who went crazy. Sometimes it's just what you have to do, is put the finger on the person that committed the crime.
And keep in mind, people are pushing for limited access to guns, and specifically police only being the ones that can have guns. These are the same people who support the Colin Kaepernicks of the world that are taking a knee because police are unjustly killing people in the streets.
I'm anti-fascist. The only people that should have guns is the government.
Right.
Okay. Let's work that out together here for a second.
That's really what they're saying. You can't make that up.
No. But only in a bubble where you're just insulated and kept from everything else around you, can you possibly come to the conclusion
that would have to be like an Inception bubble, like a bubble inside of a bubble inside of a bubble, inside of a bubble. Because how do you get to that point? These are I think I know. The people that we're talking about don't actually understand what fascism is on its most basic level.
Right.
It's if they don't like you, you're a fascist.
That's right. Just like you win all your debates by calling everyone a racist these days, right? So you get Jimmy Kimmel blaming us.
You.
Right.
And so far, I've won them all. So we can keep this up if you want. But
touche. Jimmy Kimmel blames us, and then I'm listening to Joe Rogan, who, I mean, I don't know much about Joe Rogan, but he popped up as I had YouTube playing these clips in the background as I was working today, and I'm listening to people. And his podcast, he has a clip where he's pushing for gun control now, and he has this black gentleman on with him whose name slips my mind. It was like, what was it? Alonzo. He was Alonzo somebody, because I kept thinking about Alonzo Mourning, and they're talking about this. As much as Jimmy Kimmel lied in his monologue about healthcare and lied in his monologue about gun control and how easy guns are to get and how people don't have to do background checks, kind of the equivalent. These guys just made things up. They just make them up. And so I want to kind of take all this and ball it together, and I want to cover their lies as I cover the reaction of the gun community. Listen, getting on there and trolling people about silencer versus suppressor helps no one. I understand the argument of semi-automatic versus fully automatic because that's a lie they tell, right?
Well, I think it's a lie that they can't tell anymore because he used semi-automatic weapons that were altered in a way to mimic the capability of fully automatic. Mm-hmm. So I think the media at this point can't continue to perpetuate that lie. You see what I'm saying? Does that make sense? Because now they have to admit
there's a difference.
He didn't use fully automatic weapons.
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
He did not. So they have to say that with the caveat, but they were altered to mimic the functionality.
Yeah.
So I think now, and maybe this will only last until the sensationalism is over, but I think they have to sort of fess up. Not that they're going to fess up that they've been leading people astray all along, but they have to fess up to what the reality of what the guy was actually using actually is.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a really good point. That's a idea being that they can't use their argument of fully auto anymore because they have to highlight the fact that it wasn't. He modified currently legal guns to turn them into death machines, as they would put it. So I'm bothered because I'm on a few threads, and the one thing that's about to happen, if you know, the Hearing Protection Act got put into the Sportsman's Act, basically, and Jamie Dupree from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution posted that Paul Ryan is now saying there will be no vote on this, and he says that one of the things in it is a provision to make silencers easy to buy, and of course, the very first comment, a guy says it's a suppressor, not a silencer. And then this debate breaks out where everybody wants to debate whether or not it's called a silencer or suppressor. Two things. Number one, it's a silencer. And you know why it's a silencer? Because the guy that invented it called it a silencer. So take a hike. Hiram Maxim said this is a silencer, and the reason they changed the name is because they understood back then that the PR on it was so negative, calling it a silencer, that they should call it a suppressor so it would be more widely accepted by the general public. He called it a silencer. Car, automobile, same thing. What did the guy that invented it call it? A silencer. Get over yourselves. It's not a suppressor. It's not a silencer. It's both. It's whatever you want to call it.
There isn't really a right or wrong.
Tomato,
it just
tomato,
doesn't matter.
guys. Tomato, tomato. And here's the thing. The reason it irritates me so bad is because, A, you're acting like a know-it-all that doesn't know anything about it. You've had someone tell you, well, it's a suppressor. Technically it's a suppressor. It's not a silencer. No, technically it's a silencer because that's what the guy that invented it called it. Silencer. So it's silencer. You don't get to choose. That guy got to choose, and that's what he chose. That's the way it works. Second, stop changing the subject. It doesn't matter if he used a suppressor or not. It doesn't matter. The point to be made and argued is, so what if he did? So what if he did? Why does that mean that I have less of a right to own one because someone committed a crime with it? What does that affect my God-given rights? How does it affect my God-given rights? People elected Barack Obama to office, a man who was okay with children who survived abortions suffocating to death in water closets. He voted to keep that practice legal. He voted against the only state senator to vote against it. The only one to vote against the Born Alive Infant Protection Act, which would have made it a legal obligation for the doctor performing the abortion to give that child life-saving treatment. He voted against it. It passed. But you don't hear me saying that black people shouldn't be allowed to vote because they voted for Barack Obama.
I was actually shocked to find out that he voted for something.
One of the very few.
I don't think he voted a whole lot, did he?
But the point is, as much of a crime as I find it to be that man was elected to the highest office in the land, as much as he swindled the black community of America, as much as they were taken advantage of, I don't think you should lose your right to vote because you abuse it. You have a right to do it. There's nothing I can do about it. I don't think you should lose your right to free speech because you get up in Ferguson and say, burn this bitch down, and then people actually do it. Okay? Nobody called for oppression of free speech from black Americans after Michael's stepdad,
whatever he was,
or uncle, after Michael Brown's relative got up in Ferguson and said, burn this bitch down, and then they actually did it. Nobody went around saying, well, we really need to register black people so we can make sure we know what they're going to say next time. That's ridiculous. The man has a right to say things. Does he have a right to say burn it down?
I have a Dave Chappelle skit running through my mind right now.
Exactly. Yes. He has a right to voice his opinion. He does not have a right to do that. Okay? You can't incite a riot. That's illegal already. What he did was already illegal. You have a right to own a firearm to defend yourself, your family, and the innocent people around you. Stop letting them change the subject by arguing with yourselves out there over whether or not it's called a silencer or suppressor. Say to them, so what? So what if he did use that? Why does that restrict my rights now? Because someone else committed a crime. How does that restrict my rights? Look, we have started a thing here called the Macy Project. Let me explain it to you. In 2016, more than 40,000 Americans were killed. In 1 year, that's 109 individuals a day died by automobile accident on American roadways.
It's terrifying.
109 people every single day. The Macy Project says we can save lives if we act now and make all cars illegal. Because if the left is full of people of principle and they want to get the tools of death off the streets of America, a car on the same day of Las Vegas killed twice as many people as a madman 64-year-old with an arsenal of weapons did. So, do we need to restrict guns? Yes? Then we have to restrict cars. If you believe there's a moral obligation to restrict guns for law-abiding citizens, then you must admit that you have to restrict cars as well. There's no constitutional right to own the car, but there's a constitutional right to own the gun. You have a right to freely travel the United States, but nobody says how you can do that. So we must regulate cars. We must restrict them heavily. The government needs to provide transportation for the people in a safe and efficient manner. And we can do that if you'll sign our petition. Facebook.com/FeltRecoilShow. Find the Macy Project on Facebook as well. Facebook.com/The Macy Project. We're going to make all cars illegal. And we're going to use...
With your help.
We're going to use the left's logic against them. And we're going to troll them. Same exact arguments. Get the death machines off the streets.
And if we have to, we'll do this bit by bit, just like the left does, okay? What we'll do is we'll start with spoilers, okay? And we're gonna no more spoilers. And maybe you call it a wing, I call it a spoiler. Those are gone, okay? We'll get
high capacity gas tanks.
We'll get Feinstein on that real quick. Mud tires, because why do you have those on your mall crawler? I don't know what you're doing with those, but you're probably going to kill somebody with them. Yeah. So those got to go too.
And by the way, this is going to, speaking of mall crawlers and mud tires, this will just really make all those guys mad. Your dad's not allowed to buy you any cars or accessories anymore because you got to do the paperwork when you go in to get it.
That's right. No more straw purchase of your Chevy Tahoes.
Your $50,000 truck to drive to school in the mall. Listen, the logic is perfect. You make all the cars illegal. If you will make all cars illegal...
But only the government can have cars.
Let's lay the numbers out. How many people died by homicide? By homicide, okay? Which is one person taking another person's life by firearm in 2016. Homicide.
I have no idea. 15,000.
Very close. 12,000.
Okay.
12,000 people. That is a third, less than a third, of the amount of people that died by car. So if you really care about saving lives by getting the weapons that kill people off the streets, you make all cars illegal and you save 3 times as many lives as you could if you got every gun off the street. I want you to think about that. People are still going to kill people on purpose, okay? We know for a fact that on average, 6 times as many people died in the state of Pennsylvania, I think in 2015, by fists and feet than they did by rifles, okay? It's ridiculous how many people are beaten and bludgeoned to death versus how many are murdered by firearms, okay? So people are still going to kill people. We get that. But what we're saying is, if the principle of the matter is, people are dying from guns, let's get them off the streets. 3 times as many.
Common sense, car reform, and we can get these death traps off the road.
I don't see how you don't support that idea. The Macy Project. It's on Facebook, all over the place. Go find it. We've got 5 signatures so far, and this is the first time we've talked about it. So I'm pretty excited. I think, remember, your tongue
It's
is
a grassroots movement.
Your tongue is firmly planted in your cheek as you share it with your friends, but share it, and share it some more. All right. So please stop arguing suppressor and silencer. And please, here's another place that I have trouble staying out of this. I got to admit, I have trouble staying out of it. I try to end it by showing people are stupid. But another one was the pictures of the crime scene. And this guy is adamantly saying, nope, he only used 5.56 rounds. None of those are 308s. It's clearly a Daniel Defense V5 laying there with 20-round PMags for the 308 caliber. It's clear as day. Anybody that knows anything that has handled it and seen it as a habit, it's a DD V5.
Look, everyone on Facebook is a weapons expert.
All of them.
All of them. They have shot them all. They know how machine guns work. Mm-hmm. They have it all figured out. Hey, did you see all the tripods on those guns?
All of them. Tripods everywhere.
All the tripods.
Did you see how, seriously though, did you see that his foregrip was all the way forward?
I did.
That dude had no idea what he was doing. He had no idea. But
and frankly, that picture alone makes that fact pretty obvious to me.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm not trying to play like I'm Mr. Expert. I'm just saying
nobody does that. Nobody that knows anything does that is the point. It's kind of almost step 2. Buy an AR, shoot it a couple times, and you accessorize it and talk to somebody about, hey, how do I find a way to situate all this stuff?
I found myself fighting the urge to feed the trolls. Because as I'm looking for information. I'm trying to figure out, okay, what actually happened here? Just like everybody else. Because I feel like there's information being withheld. So you go search it out, right? And then you turn to these discussions on forums and Facebook and wherever else, and suddenly everyone is an expert.
Oh, man.
And you just have to fight the urge because 99.9% of them do not know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
And you have to look at it and go, okay, I could correct this guy and I would know I'm right, but his opinion's not going to change. Right. And then this is just going to start this troll flame war where nobody wins.
Yeah.
And I'm just upset about it. I'm mad about it. He thinks he's on some superiority kick and he knows everything there is to know, and I'm just some guy.
Just gotta let it go. Try to keep in mind, this is my admonition to you. Just try, everyone, all of us, please, try and keep in mind what the argument is really about. Does a crime committed by a madman somehow mean the state can now restrict the rights of all of those who possessed the same items and did nothing illegal with them on the same day? I've got a closet full of guns in my house, man. They're on lockdown, dehumidifiers in the closet. Got it. Get it. I'm not out to hurt anybody, okay? I've been into guns probably longer than that guy ever was. Why do I suddenly have to give mine up because someone else did something crazy with it? Because for every one crazy guy like that, which we get how many? Let's just say we get one mass shooter a year like that. It's probably the going rate if we did the math on it. They're not very common, by the way. But let's just say we had one a year. 300 million firearms in the United States of America. Is it 30 million firearms owners? 40 million firearms owners? Something like that. And one guy a year means we get to kick over the apple cart and say, start all over, something's wrong. The logic doesn't add up. And the point I would make to anyone I'm speaking with online or in person is, now, let me just ask you this. If they can now restrict your Second Amendment right because of a crime committed by a madman, what stops them from restricting every other right? What stops them from that? If the state can come and say, give us your guns and register your guns because of a mass shooting, then tomorrow when a terrorist blows a church apart somewhere, what stops the state from coming to your house and saying, you go to the same church, we're coming in? And you go, wait a second, 500 people go to my church. Why are you coming in my house? No. We're going in everybody's house. No, I have a Fourth Amendment right. Not anymore. We passed a law. We don't need a warrant because you're a religious fanatic. How am I a religious fanatic? Well, you go to church every Sunday. You're all about religion. We're coming in. Move. Okay. Hey, I want to go out and vote. You can't vote. Well, I have a constitutional right to vote. No, you can't. You're a religious fanatic. And we have found that you guys keep electing people who are also religious fanatics. And that means bad things will happen because this religious fanatic committed a crime over here, so you can't vote anymore. Where do you end it? Where do you stop?
And as far-fetched as that might seem, I think that's a very fine line.
Yeah, it's a very logical conclusion if the argument the left is making right now is a crime that is an atrocity against society should be cause enough for us to restrict your natural rights. You can no longer defend your family from every threat you might face because this guy committed a crime one time. Wait a second. What sense does that make? Well, it just does. It makes sense because you want to use a gun and he used a gun. Yeah, but I'm going to use a gun for good things. No, sorry.
Does it make me a terrible gun person if I say, let them have the slide fire stocks? Nobody likes those things anyway. And then they do that and they take those things away. And go, we sure showed all those rednecks.
Right.
We got all their bump fires. And so then they're done. They're like, mission accomplished, and they're all high-fiving. The Hillary Clintons of the world are just, they're on cloud nine. Am I a bad person for going, yeah, let them have them?
My problem with that is the same.
Sure. Slippery slope, right?
What other accessory can they take? So if you look at the guy's rifle and they go, well, he had a Daniel Defense, and it had this. I don't know this. I don't think this is true. Do we understand that I'm just conjecturing here? Daniel Defense makes rifles where a Geisley trigger comes pre-installed. What if his rifle had the Geisley? And so they go, he had a slide fire stock and a Geisley trigger. Those things are both illegal now. Well, we gave him the stock. How do we stop him from the trigger?
Sure.
So, no, don't give him a stock. Don't give an inch.
I'm with you.
Don't give an inch. And you say, wait.
I still think they're stupid.
They're totally stupid.
I just want to throw that out there.
But wait, what you're doing is conceding, right? When really the onus is on them. They started the conversation. They made the argument, hey, now this should be illegal, right? And you go, well, wait, why? Well, because, look, he just killed 58 people in Las Vegas. What do you mean, why?
My suggestion's more tongue-in-cheek.
I understand.
My point is you give them an inch, they'll take a mile.
Yeah, of course. And
they'll consider that a battle won and fodder for the next one.
Yeah. Yep. It's not like, we did make it harder to get on a plane after 9/11, but it's almost like the government would say, they're using our passenger jets to take down buildings. You're right. 3,000 people dead. I'm not saying we should take away their right to fly, but we really should get rid of passenger planes. Yep, we should. Lear jets for everybody. And the price of your ticket's going to skyrocket. And if you can't get there in a Cessna, too bad. You know what I'm saying? No. Nobody did that after 9/11, but it's the exact same line of thinking. It's the exact same line of thinking that we have to take the guns because a guy used a gun to kill a bunch of people. But no other object do they do that. There's no other object where they treat it that way. Again, cars are killing people exponentially more every day than guns are. Unless you live in Chicago, maybe it breaks even. But 40,000 people dead because of cars every year. 12,000 homicides. Okay? I'm not counting suicides. I'm not counting instances where somebody accidentally shoots themselves. I'm saying madmen with guns. And by the way, that's not true. I'm not saying that. Homicides would include when a police officer shoots a bad guy like Michael Brown who's trying to kill him. That's a homicide. It's justifiable, but it's still a homicide.
Sure.
12,000 a year versus 40,000 a year. They don't care. The whole point here is money.
They don't care.
You take it all back to the money. It's about the money.
You and I had an offline conversation about this the other day, but somewhere near the amount of people that died in Las Vegas during that attack, and I don't mean to say this and be insensitive, that same number of people, give or take, are dying every week in Chicago. Mm-hmm. Yet no one seems to care.
Nobody cares.
Because it didn't happen all at once, all at the same place.
Yeah.
And it can't be sensationalized in that way. There's nothing really to talk about. But it continues to happen, and they are literally doing nothing about it. Name one thing that the city of Chicago the state government or the federal government has done to step in. How many bills has Dianne Feinstein authored to combat gun violence in that city?
Right.
None.
Right.
Because nobody cares.
Well, and you know what? I think Chicago is a prime example of liberalism's snake eating its own tail, because they can't critique the black community. You can't stand up and say black on black crime is exponentially higher than any other statistic, demographically measured crime.
Sure.
See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Meaning black men kill other black men at a rate much higher than white men kill white men or Hispanic men kill Hispanic men. No, you can't say that, because liberalism and the media, being liberal, has created this environment where if you say that, you're a racist. So CNN cannot do a documentary about how black men keep killing black men, because then the blowback is, well, why are you guys picking on black people? White people kill white people every day. And CNN is too afraid to go, but not at this rate. You're 13% of the population, and you're killing each other. I believe the figure is something like 8 times more often.
Yeah.
You're 13% of the population. You're killing each other 8 times more often. That is an issue that must be dealt with. So let's talk about the family unit. Let's talk about education. Let's talk about how those two things can create an environment in which children will thrive. We made a joke last week that the show was sponsored by white privilege, and then we picked on Barack Obama and Colin Kaepernick because they both hate white people but were raised by them. Well, why do they have disdain?
That's a cold burn.
Why do they have disdain for the white race? Because they don't want to admit it's projection. They don't want to admit that there's a problem with the family unit in the black community. But you got two of the most successful people in the world, right? You got a professional football player and the president of the United States, both of whom were abandoned by their black family and raised by white people. And they're successful because they have a structure. Of course, Obama's mom married a minority man after his dad fled, and they raised him together and all that. I get it. But the point stands, the family unit was broken. And that's very typical for the black community. And it's starting to become typical for the white community. And to me, we have to deal with that. Divorce cannot be an acceptable option. When my wife and I started dating, that was one of the first things we talked about. Where do you stand on divorce? It's never an option. I told my wife after we had kids, even if I hate you to the core of my being, and I mean this sincerely, I don't know how I ever could, because she makes all the money, but even if I hate you to the core of my being, I would put up with you for the sake of the kids. Because the kids need the structure. The kids love their mom as much as they love their dad. And even if mom and dad hate each other, you got to be big enough to look at the kids and go, yeah, but you know what? He needs me as much as he needs her, and we need to be together. Drives me nuts to see split families together and saying, I know we were meant for each other. I know we were, You're both divorced. You both have kids from other other people helped make your children. You're now putting them in this environment where there's 6 different parents involved somehow. It's also convoluted and crazy. And then you act like, but this is great. We're all happy. They're not happy. They're miserable. They're miserable. They won't tell you, but they're miserable. They want their mom and they want their dad. The point is, nobody's going to talk about that with the black community because the liberal media has made it so taboo to critique anything about the black community. The black community is not the community the media would have you believe they are. I don't think the black community as a whole thinks Michael Brown was such a good guy, but the media would have you believe he was, and that they believe that because one small section of Ferguson, Missouri, went out there and tore everything apart.
Well, I think I don't think you're wrong about what you're saying, but I would add to it and say that I think it's funny when we have, and this is kind of going back to specifically to Chicago, you have gun violence that's perpetrated primarily with handguns, cheap, disposable handguns,
right,
as I would call them, the High Points and the Kel-Tecs of the world, and the calls for gun control are rather muted. But when we have people killed with these scary assault weapons, I'm using air quotes, then it's suddenly a priority. So that's just, there's this strange double standard in we're willing to, when I say we, I really mean liberals, are willing to look the other direction until it's an argument that they can easily sensationalize.
Yeah.
I think that's what's kind of funny about the whole thing.
So I want to ask a question. Not really, kind of shifting gears, but going back to where we were here. I go to a lot of concerts. We're going to one in just another couple of weeks. We're going to go see Old Crow Medicine Show. I'm pretty excited about that. Love those guys. And for some reason, I saw that the last time I saw Old Crow was in Roanoke, Virginia. Great show, outdoor amphitheater, blah, blah, blah. But for years, I have been convinced that security is impeccable at these events. And what I can't understand, what I really have trouble with, is that you're the Las Vegas Police Department, and you look at where they're going to host 20,000 people at a concert, surrounded by high-rise buildings, and nobody broached the subject of a sharpshooter on hand in case of something like this. No, but how is there not? And I'm being a Monday morning quarterback. I think those guys are all heroes for responding. By the way, please, for the love of God, if you're a cop and there's an active shooter, can you please rip off your high-vis vest? What is going on that cops in that video are wearing neon yellow vests? Rip it off and throw it down. You're in all tan. Try to blend in a little bit. My God, what was going on?
I'm not real sure what those are about.
I could not believe. There's guys running around half bent over, high-vis vests. You are a target. Take the vest off. You're telling me that nobody...
It's got to be some strange departmental policy.
Screw that.
Right.
Screw that.
Yeah.
Rip it off, throw it to the ground, go home to your family at the end of the night.
Agreed.
Deal with the evil and go home. Policy goes out the window when a dude is mowing down 20,000 people from his hotel room window. How was there never a conversation? Hey guys, we really need to consider the fact that we're surrounded by high-rise buildings, and if somebody wanted to, they could rain down some death on these. I'm not saying they failed in any way. Not at all. Again, these are heroes. They did God's work. They're braver than I am. I admit it. As a Monday morning quarterback, how in the world was there never a conversation where they said, we might want to think about what happens if somebody starts shooting from up there?
I would venture to say that you will see that in the future. Moving forward, I think any kind of event where you've got exposures like that, you're going to see departments taking some notice.
Patrick, we're 16 years past 9/11.
Sure.
And we're not thinking like bad guys? Every event I go to, I look around and go, okay, how would I kill everybody? And I mean that sincerely. And that's not a joke, that I look around and say, how would I start killing people? And if I can come up with a way that's very diabolical and cynical, I keep that in mind and I avoid being in that circumstance. I would look at that. If they said to me, we're going to have 20,000 people down there and all these high points of visibility where someone could really... So what are our exits? Well, we got like 4 exits. We got 20,000 people. Okay, whoa. How are we going to combat this? How would I kill as many people as possible? 1, strap a bomb to my body and blow myself up. Okay, there's really no way to combat that except let's pat everybody down, maybe put them through metal detectors. Great idea. What else you got? I'd probably find a high point and a good vantage point and just start popping them off, man. I mean, again, I know I'm a Monday morning quarterback.
For this particular scenario, I don't know that there's a way you could have planned for that. I mean, we're talking about a guy that beat out the windows. I've stayed in hotels that are high rises before, and that's some seriously thick glass. I can't imagine how hard you would have to hit it with a sledgehammer to break it. It's meant to withstand tornado strength winds, right? I mean, so specifically, this one is tough. That's not to say what would be the difference if somehow he gained access to the roof. similar scenario, right?
Sure.
So that's where you should have some sort of counter sniper in place to take care of the threat.
20,000 people, fish in a barrel.
And I don't mean to derail your thought, but my mind goes to, you just made the comment, 16 years we've been at this with the threat of violent, random terror acts. And watch how the crowd reacts.
Right.
Watch these videos.
Great point.
They are absolutely mind-blowing, the way people just stand there. And I think it's a combination of a couple things. One, not being situationally aware. Two, just, as you put it, normalcy bias. I mean, hey, we're out here having a good time. Nothing can go wrong.
Right.
That's what these people are thinking.
What I'm seeing is not what's happening. Can't be.
Right. Yeah, they refuse to believe it as it unfolds. I mean, I saw a couple of videos that were so bizarre in that probably 90% of the people had fled the scene, and then you still had clusters of people standing like they're hanging out after the concert was over.
Yeah.
In a little group, huddled up, just having chit-chat.
Yeah.
Absolutely the most bizarre thing I think I've ever seen.
There's a video where, and I've just, you get caught in the abyss. I wish I could tell you it's on our Facebook page, but I'll probably never be able to find it again. But I watched a video of a woman who took video of another woman who took video of the crowd as the shots rang out. And in between bursts of fire, you can watch a blonde-haired woman send her video out. She has her phone. She's recording. And then she pulls her phone in and starts typing. And then and then it stops again, and she decides to hunker down and get out of the way.
Absolutely mind-blowing.
How in the world? Those are people, I think, who have never... I mean, you really just have to have just no idea what these machines are capable of. As somebody who's been around guns, full autos, on a probably much more regular basis than many, many people, I hear that sound, man, and it's out of place. I'm not at a range. I'm out of there. I don't know what that is. I don't know if that's a good guy shooting or a bad guy shooting, but I know what it is. And there's no way something good's happening over there. Let's go. Not something you film.
I mean, would you rather move out of an abundance of caution,
right,
and say you and your wife or your friends, let's say it wasn't a shooter, but you thought it was, and you grab them up and you say, we got to go, we got to move.
Yeah.
And you look them in the eye and you say, we're going. And you take off. And let's say it wasn't what you thought it was. Would you rather live with that embarrassment for that night?
Right, yes.
And maybe get ragged for a few minutes?
Yes.
Over a beer afterwards? Or would you rather stand there like a moron? And again, I mean, no offense,
like a fish in the barrel,
to the people who were there, but like a moron, and just stand there looking around because you're in that conditioned white where you have no idea what's going on around you, so you just lock up.
Listen, if you're not doing this, do yourself this favor, and I mean this sincerely. Read about the OODA loop. Read about the scientific idea that began with fighter pilots, if I'm not mistaken, that you must observe your surroundings, orient yourself to your new surroundings, then decide and then act. OODA, OODA loop. Practice it everywhere you can practice it. It's actually, it's not super hard.
Also, emphasize the loop. What's the purpose of the loop?
To break out of it.
Well, once you act, what do you need to do? You just start over.
Yeah, yeah.
So orient again.
Yeah.
So if you're in that situation and you do have to move and you grab your friends and your loved ones, you're going to get to where you think is safe. Then we need to start that process over again. Mm-hmm. And frankly, it's a process that shouldn't really stop. So
I don't know if experts would agree, but here's a way I apply it in my everyday life. I have a house.
Well, ask me, because I'm basically an expert.
You got it. M&P Armor.
That's right.
In my house is full of children, And so there's a lot of banging and a lot of noises, and especially if we ride down the road with our little girl who throws everything you hand her across the car and makes a loud bang. One of the things I do in my head, especially in the house, is when the noise happens, I decide what I believe it was because I've observed the noise, I've oriented myself to someone through something, and then I decide how do I handle it, and I go act. Meaning, if somebody throws something and it lands on the floor, I try and make it a habit to get up, see what it was, and move it. Make sense?
Sure.
And then go back to regularly scheduled programming. If a kid starts crying, I'm able to listen to the cry, orient myself, what type of cry is this? How quick do I need to get there? And then get there that quickly. Make sense? Those are all OODA loop habits I'm trying to create where when something breaks me out of whatever I'm currently doing, because you're always in an OODA loop.
I was going to say, people are doing it whether they realize it or not.
Yes.
The issue at hand is in this type of scenario that it's unexpected and you are fearing for your life, people have a tendency to lock up.
And what they're doing is skipping the second O. They're not orienting themselves to their true surroundings. They're observing, and then whether they want to admit it or not, they're deciding to act by standing there and filming. Dan Bilzerian.
Oh, yeah. Screw that guy. You know, I had a guy, the first time I ever heard of the OODA loop was from a guy I took a class from who was a Marine. And one of his key points was make a decision.
Yeah.
The worst decision is no decision. Yeah. And I see that in these videos of these people that are standing still. They have decided, unbeknownst to them, to not do anything.
Yeah.
And that is terrifying because they're leaving themselves open as this guy's raining bullets down.
It's crazy, isn't it?
You know, I know we'll probably never know, but I would be curious how many people were shot initially and then how many were shot subsequently.
Yeah.
Because they didn't get the hell out of there.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it's hard, I'm sure, if you're in the middle of the pack, man, and there's 20,000 people there. Come on. It's just, he couldn't have planned it better, whether he tried to or not. He chose a very soft target that I believe was softer than it needed to be. I would be interested to hear the answer from the Las Vegas Police Department of how there was no decision made to have somebody on hand in case this type of thing happened. You can have officers walking around everywhere, but you're telling it's not a consideration that someone gets access to a rooftop or bursts out a window and starts shooting at people?
I would think that
it's not a consideration.
An organization like Homeland Security would be all over this. And I'm saying that strictly because ISIS has said in recent months that Las Vegas was a target for them because it's a symbol of all Western debauchery. It's Sin City. Yeah. So I have a little bit of a hard time not believing that counterterrorism teams are in place in Las Vegas 24 hours a day.
Yeah.
I mean, look, the place doesn't stop, so seems like somewhat of a necessity, right?
It just makes you wonder. And again, Monday morning quarterbacking, and it's hard to blame anybody, and I'm not blaming anybody at all. Actually, I'm just thinking out loud about how do you not say, let's have sharpshooters on hand so in case this happens. Because if I'm in a meeting and I'm in charge, and I say, all right, guys, let's war game this. We got this country music festival coming, 20,000 people in attendance per concert. It goes all day, all night. What do we need to think about? Oh, well, we got drunk people. We got fist fights. Okay, sure. Normal concert stuff. Doesn't matter if it's country music, R&B, whatever. Yeah, it's normal stuff. What are we on the lookout for? Well, we need to keep sharp objects out, no pocket knives, things like that. Okay, yeah, great. What else? And then to me, you would work your way up. And if I'm in the room and I say, now what about if I'm in one of these hotels and I'm in ISIS and I want to blow these people up, or I want to start shooting at them, or I want to shoot a rocket out my window, how do we respond to that? That's impossible. Is it? Well, I mean, that glass is so thick. Okay, what would it take to destroy the glass? You need a pretty high-powered rifle. So there's a possibility. Well, yeah, it's possible. It's not very likely. I didn't ask if it was likely. Is it a possibility? Yeah. Then prepare against it.
I don't know a whole lot about the inner workings of these counterterrorism task forces, but I would think that they have some bright individuals that's what they do is they war game.
Sure.
And they plan for the day they hope never comes.
Yeah.
I mean, our government has essentially, I would say, sustained itself by doing as such for a long time.
Yeah.
Look at things like the Cuban Missile Crisis and the Cold War. To me, I think a lot of these, what could have been terrible crises were thwarted or averted because we had people in place to go, okay, if this, then this. What about this? Mm-hmm. Okay, but what if this happens?
Yeah.
Okay, what about that? Okay, what if this and this happens at the same time? How do we handle all that? Do we have the capability? Okay, do we have the right people that are trained? Are they in the right place?
Right.
If the government is supposed to protect people, if that's what it's really supposed to do, why is it not working? And again, Monday morning quarterback, right? So I'm not pointing the finger. I'm saying, are we taking the appropriate steps to war game scenarios like this? Because now you can't go to a movie theater, can't go to a concert, can't go to church, as seen a week or so ago in Tennessee, right?
Right.
Everywhere, can't go to school. Everywhere you go now is a potential threat. So,
and by the way, these are all places, everywhere you just named, from the movie theater to your church to your school, are all places that are usually legally unarmed.
Sure.
The government tells you cannot carry. Most movie theaters have no carry signs.
The only thing I'll say about that is, man, the trolls on Facebook that were talking about, man, if I'd been there, I'd have been shooting back.
No, you wouldn't.
No, you wouldn't.
In Las Vegas?
400 yards away, 30 some odd stories
34
up.
floors up, right? Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Just stop.
You're not shooting back.
You're an idiot. Yeah. Just stop.
Because it's so far. At best, you're not carrying a rifle around with you.
No.
At best, you're carrying a long-barreled handgun of some sort. You're not hitting that.
Even if you had a rifle, average guy's not making that shot.
Come on. 100 yards? Okay, sure.
How many guys go to the range and practice shooting at an elevated target?
All the time. Not on purpose. They just shoot the roof. Oh, sorry, hit your tiles. Yeah, can you not hit them again? Yeah, but it's the AK pistol. Right. Look down the sights for me, would you?
I'm just making the point. It's a little different when someone's shooting back.
Oh, yeah.
And to shoot elevated, ballistics take on a whole different way of working. Okay, so when you're standing in your little bay at the range and you're shooting at that silhouette target that's not shooting back and you're shooting in a straight line parallel to the ground, it's not quite the same.
Don't
so
you
all
worry.
those guys just need to shut up.
Don't you worry, man. I always shoot about 6 inches high.
Probably all Dan Bilzerian's friends saying they were, man, throw this football over his mountains.
That guy. If you're not familiar, Dan Bilzerian is
a hack.
He's a hack. He plays himself off like he was a Navy SEAL. He actually flunked out of SEAL training twice. And now he's big on Instagram. He's a professional poker player who hires girls to hang out with him and wear next to nothing, and he makes Instagram videos. I didn't know a lot about him. The only thing I knew about him was I one time saw a video from him where he had a bunch of $1,000 drones that he shot out of the sky with a shotgun. And I thought, how much money would you have to do this? And then I discovered who he was.
That's his whole shtick, though, is I got more money than you, and let me show you all the ways I can waste it.
So what happened was the shooting rang out, and he turned his phone on, put it on himself, and ran away saying that a girl near him just got shot in the head. He didn't know what to do. And Dakota Meyer, Medal of Honor recipient, said, this is why you don't choose your heroes based on followers and likes, because some of them will run when danger happens. And then Dan's story is, whoa, I was running to get a gun. Although his initial story was, I took a girl to the hospital, then got a gun. If you go watch his Snapchat videos, all he said he did was go and get a gun. So he's either adding an element or forgetting an element, depending on which story he's telling.
Or he's just full of crap all around.
Look, there were a lot of heroes in Las Vegas. probably thousands of heroes, and none of them pulled their cell phone out to document what was happening. They actually just went straight into action and took care of some really
You might find this
people.
hard to believe, but to be a hero, generally it doesn't require the use of you videotaping yourself with your cell phone.
Wait.
I know that might seem strange.
Are you saying that neither Kyle Carpenter or Dakota Meyer was on Instagram as they got blown up?
No, sir, I don't believe they were.
I'm gonna have to
And that's
look.
probably, I mean,
I'm
cell
gonna have to look into
service.
this. I'm gonna look into it.
Cell service in Afghanistan is a little spotty, from what I understand.
To those who would say they'd shoot back, by the way, according to KansasCity.com, I'll get it right one day. Many people at the concert below, like many of them, the man in the hotel room directly beneath the Las Vegas shooter's room initially thought fireworks were going off. Floyd Conrad of Emporia, Kansas, was in Vegas for business. He was getting ready for bed on the 31st floor. I'm sorry. Okay, so the shooter was on 32. I said 34 earlier. He was getting ready for bed on the 31st floor of the Mandalay Bay Resort and Casino. By his account, the moments leading up to 10:08 p.m. local time did not particularly stand out. But then rapid-fire shots sounded, like a finale on the 4th of July. Conrad is 50 years old. He noticed some debris hit his window, and as it plummeted towards the ground, where 22,000 people were at a country music concert, he realized they were taking fire in a crowded pen with few escape routes. At least 58 people are dead. Conrad moved away from the window as the bullets rained down. He went to his bedroom and always kept something between himself and the glass. He stood, he sat, he used an app on his phone to listen to law enforcement chatter. After the firing stopped, he decided to poke his head in the hallway, where he saw 4 or 5 armed officers, one of whom demanded he return to his room, so he did. He sat and he waited. Given the darkness and his vantage point, he couldn't make out details on the ground. The few times he moved toward the window, most of the time he stayed away from the window. He heard officers over the radio announce the gunman's room number. It was 1 digit off from his own, 31, 134, and adjoining room 135. That's when he knew the gunfire he'd heard had been coming from directly above. Conrad felt safe through it all because of the concrete between him and the mass murderer. The explosion above that signified officers breaching Paddock's room startled Conrad more than the gunfire did. The gunfire was surprisingly quiet from within his room. The footsteps of investigators combing the room seemed loud. Glass crunched beneath their feet, and on it goes. He didn't sleep that night. When daybreak hit and he could see the debris and the first responders and what he thought were body bags on the ground, the havoc from the night before took on a surreal quality. Days have passed. He's still in his room, by the way. Business calls. He'll fly home Friday. He never considered trying to change rooms. He considered the shooting a freak accident and a freak event, something that could happen anywhere. Conrad, who said he's a supporter of the Second Amendment, grew up hunting. He was taught to respect the rifles and shotguns he handled as a child. Makes sense why I'm reading that to you? You think about shooting back, that's a guy you could hit.
Yep.
Just an innocent dude that the police told him he couldn't leave his room. And you're going to shoot back? You better be sure you can take that shot.
Lots and lots of people around him
like that.
Probably people to his left, or his right, I should say, above him and below him. And so I think you're exactly right. Nobody's taking that shot.
Yeah, no, take the shot. Yeah, okay. All right. One more thing before we go. I want to tell you one thing. 2 things, really. I have an FN 509, and I want to sing its praises for a second. I took a class recently where I shot my Glock 17 most of the time I was there. And when I got to about midway through the last day of the class, I switched to my 509, and it was like my hands took a vacation, man. That 509 is legit. I'm just telling you. I got about, I would say, close to 500 rounds through it at this point, and that thing is awesome. Think about it, okay? It sells for like $525. It's worth getting. It's no Beretta Pico, but it is a 509.
Even the lavender model?
I mean, I've seen gun stores have more Picos than they do 509s. It blows my mind. Probably just because the 509s sell and Picos don't. Would probably be the answer
that would
there.
make sense.
Yeah. But
you would think.
It's pretty awesome. Think about it. So that leads me to Patrick's rundown, if you will, of what Recoil Web calls the brand new and shiny Glock 46.
Allegedly. And please forgive us because we said we were going to talk about this last week and we got wound up. I mean, I don't know how it could have happened, but somehow we got wound up on whatever we were talking about.
Yeah, Barack Obama. I blame him.
Sounds about right.
I'm still blaming him for a lot of things.
So we glossed over it, but a German magazine, maybe on purpose, maybe not, leaked some information regarding a new Glock model. Seems like we've skipped a couple numbers, but they're alleging that the Glock 46 may be on the way, and the reason why they have this information is because this is a Glock model that allegedly has been designed specifically for German police forces. And if I couldn't be any less excited about a Glock product than I was the Gen 5, or so I thought, I found one, because this is it. The big thing about this is it appears to be a Glock 19 size, which is great. I love my Glock 19. However, this one features a rotating barrel design. And you might be asking, Self, what is a rotating barrel?
Pray tell.
What does that mean? Your traditional Glock uses the John Moses Browning delayed blowback tilting barrel design. So when the slide racks to the rear and the gun's empty, you'll notice that the barrel tilts upwards. The point of that is to basically make it easier to load the next round off the magazine.
And who'd you say designed that?
John Moses Browning.
Was he a gun guy, or?
I mean, he was no Stephen Paddock.
Okay. Wow. Yikes.
He was a gun guy.
Hold on. What?
Too soon?
Satan says you have to leave.
Too soon?
Even the devil was offended by that one, my friend. All right, go ahead. Good grief.
Yeah, sorry. This gun, however, uses a design where when the barrel unlocks from the slide, the barrel actually rotates to unlock rather than tilts to unlock.
So does that increase life expectancy?
You would have to ask Beretta.
Okay.
I think, because
PX4s will do it.
PX4s do that. I just don't know what the point of this is.
I'll tell you what I do like about it. It looks like it's single stack. Do you think I'm wrong on that? If you look at the image where you can look down and see the bullet sitting in the mag, it looks to be single stack.
I'm going to say it's not, because the round's going to center itself at the top of the magazine. And it looks like you just see the follower underneath it.
I guess that makes sense. Yeah, maybe.
Looks like it uses a sear design out of the Gen 1 through 4 models. I don't know that these guns are any more reliable or any less reliable. But if you go to your average gun store and take a poll of all the guns they have there, 99.9% of them are going to be Browning tilting barrel designs. You're going to see a couple of outliers that are rotating barrel designs, and you're going to see a couple of Walthers and Bursas and crap like that, emphasis on crap, that are fixed barrel designs that are, in my opinion, extremely unreliable. So I don't know. Glock sort of has always prided themselves on their inability to change.
Right. Well, and they did change. Now you don't have to pull the trigger to get that one apart. So you can be excited about that.
Well, that was Sig's claim to fame with a 320, and look where that got him.
No.
So I'm just not sure. They've been so unwilling to change.
Yeah.
And when people have asked them for things like, hey guys, could you stop putting finger grooves on all of these guns? That'd be great. And Glock was like, no, do what we want. We're Glock.
Right. Perfect.
So then they get around to it 5 generations later. Well, from 2 to 5, I should say. And now they're stepping out. So this could mean one of two things, in my opinion. One, this could be the demise of Glock. Cue the dramatic music. Dum, dum, dum. Or this could lead to some serious innovation. Not that rotating barrels are all that innovative, in my opinion, but this might show their willingness to step outside of their standard design and maybe try some things that are a little less conventional.
I mean, to be real fair here, and I hope you're right, John Moses Browning was born in 1855.
Yes, sir.
Glocks were introduced in 1981. Okay? So the innovation that has come from everything John Moses Browning designed, which is a list too long to name here, hopefully we could see Glock kind of turn that corner and say, hey, you know what? Here's an idea. Let's be more like the innovators and more like market leaders and trendsetters than we are just comfortable where we are. That'd be nice. At least I think it'd be nice. So, what, Siri? Shut up, Siri.
I think Siri just wanted to tell me they were going to put a reminder in for John Moses Browning's birthday.
Nice.
And then it just deleted it, and I don't know why.
All right. Did you see Glock's official response?
No, sir.
By the way,
I didn't.
Their official response is that the 46 was developed by Glock in response to an overseas solicitation. I got arrested for that once. The pistol meets or exceeds. I didn't. The pistol meets or exceeds all of the solicitation requirements and is not currently available to the U.S. market. So there you go. That's a real thing. Interesting. All right.
And it may never be. We might never get our hands on it.
It doesn't look like we'd miss much. It really
I'm okay
looks
with it.
like a Gen 319 from the diagrams on Recoil Web.
The only thing that I see that stands out is it has that sort of extended beaver tail like the 42s and 43s.
Yeah.
Which,
yeah, that could be nice.
I don't think that's all bad. No finger grooves on the front. Same old crappy Glock rail up front.
You are so sour.
Yeah, well, you know. Everything else looks pretty par for the course. Still can't manage to put front slide serrations on these bad boys.
No. That's a summer special. It has to be summertime to get that.
Oh.
You didn't know that?
Oh,
You're
all right.
You dummy.
What are they going to do next summer? Put it in a bikini?
Maybe. Possibly put one finger groove back in it and then one slide serration up front. Something like that. Call it the skinny Glock. Yeah, for summer. Yeah, swimsuit season. I have no idea what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I should stop.
All right, find us at facebook.com/Felt Recoil Show. Sign our petition. We need to make all cars illegal. More than 100 innocent Americans die because of cars every single day. That's 40,000 friends and family members lost every year because of cars. We have a moral obligation to make all cars illegal and require the government to provide safe and efficient transportation to the people. We can act now. We can save lives. We must make all cars illegal. Facebook.com/Felt Recoil Show, or just go to feltrecoilshow.com. You can find us on all the socials. It'll be a good time. We'll see you next week. That wraps up this week's Felt Recoil episode number 46.